D&D primarily uses the spellcasting system to represent magic, and this is only increasing as we see entire classes and subclasses be centered around the casting of a specific spell. But why do I find this problematic? It comes down to flexibility. The spellcasting system was inspired by Vancian Magic. This means that spells have a specific set of parameters and the effect is fixed. Also, spellcasters have a limited number of times they can use their spells within a day. Previously, this was described as the spellcasters forgetting the spell, but that's not quite present anymore. But regardless, these two traits make D&D's main way of representing magic inconsistent with many fantasy settings, and it becomes a problem in two contexts. What happens when Wizards Coast is attempting to create a crossover product with worlds with existing magic systems? We've seen this happen already when they make Magic the Gathering books, because rather than inventing a magic system to reflect how magic operates within that IP, they simply create new spells that are inspired by effects from the other game. What happens when the players of D&D want to write their own lore for their settings and how magic works, or if they want to adapt magic systems from pop culture that they like? The game is not flexible enough to support these other interpretations of magic. I'm going to use Witch Hat as my main example because it is most dissimilar to the spellcasting system. So let's talk about spell levels. Spells are divided into 10 levels, including cantrips. The level that a mage can use is based on their level of experience and the amount of spell slots available to them. It's like a magic within you that you exhaust as you cast spells. These concepts are not present in Witch Hat Atelier. Any of these inexperienced apprentices can cast the spell that they see their master cast by copying the pattern of the spell, because in this world, spells aren't based on the user's experience, they are simply illustrations that anyone can draw. So you're not expending spell slots to cast spells. You're just putting out ink and paper, which is a whole different resource. So you won't be resting to get spell slots back. You would have to visit a stationery store to get your materials back, which is very different from the assumptions that D&D works with. I'd also want to discuss class design in this as well, because we're seeing quite frequently that whenever a new mage class is being made, they're using spellcasting to represent their magic, and I feel that this is wildly inappropriate. Artificer is a magical engineer, but 5e represents them as a spellcaster. You're recommended to describe your spells as inventions that your artificer made. I see a problem with this. Okay, your artificer has a gadget that lets them produce the effects of acid spray. However, because this is mechanically represented as a spell, your artificer has no means to hand that gadget over to one of the players, even when it would be in character for them to do so. So this is what I mean when I'm saying that, like, the attachment to the spellcasting system is robbing us from like properly exploring the different ways that characters would have relationships with magic, because hey, the artificer's entire thing will be producing items that they share, and they did that with infusions. So I question why infusions couldn't be the entirety of the artificer's relationship with magic. Why have spells that pretend to be gadgets when we could go all in on gadgets? For decades, psionics was described as a magic system that was entirely separate from spellcasting, but in a recent arcana, they suggested that psionics would be a new form of spellcasting going forward. And this idea frustrates me because we are erasing diversity for no benefit. An alternative system for psionics was already invented with psionic energy dice. The new Scion class makes use of psionic energy dice. Why was there any need to include spellcasting or spell slots on the base Scion class? Also, there's so much history around the difference between psionics and spellcasting. There are worlds where spellcasting has a harmful effect on the environment, so you can use psionics as a means of getting around that. There are species that don't make use of spellcasting but make use of psionics, and there is a tension there between the members of that species who use spellcasting. How are we going to address all of this history that's being undone? And what is the benefit of undoing this history? I want Dungeons & Dragons to experiment with more magic systems beyond spellcasting. I want to see less class features that reference spells within them. I want to see classes that have distinct expressions and interactions with magic.